Thought Media Network proudly presents a weekly exploration of various spiritual practices with renowned spiritual authors, coaches, teachers, and Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP.
And now, here's Tracy.
Hey everybody, you know I love that. And now here's Tracy. Yeah, I am. I'm Tracy Brown. I am right here, and we are here for poetry, prayer, and practice, where every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, we get to dive in a little bit and explore poetry as a spiritual practice, or poetry, how it inspires spiritual practice, prayer, and how we can use it to change our lives, and all other spiritual practices, but especially like how we apply spiritual practice in our own lives and how different people use spiritual practices in different ways. So I want to welcome you to Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. And this week, I'm so delighted. I have been waiting to talk with this amazing person about her spiritual practices and her take on prayer and all things spiritual. So Rev Melissa is my guest today, and we're just going to be diving in. Now, you may be familiar with Rev Melissa because she hosts a show 5 days a week right here on the New Thought Media Network called Morning S.I.P. And I'll let her tell you what S.I.P. is an acronym for. Plus, she is a very active minister in the Centers for Spiritual Living family and in other communities. So I want to welcome in Rev Melissa. Hey.
Hey, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
I just want to warn people, and this is not a disclaimer. This is your safety warning. Like, fasten your seatbelt. We are not working from a script. This is candid conversation. You are going to be eavesdropping on Tracy and Melissa just talking. And so in that case, I cannot tell you where we might go. But wherever we go, it's going to be good, good, good. Yes?
Yes.
So, Melissa, tell people about Morning S.I.P. and the acronym S.I.P.
Okay. So, Morning S.I.P. S.I.P. stands for Spirit in Practice. Spirit in Practice. And I'm all about the practice. I think practice makes progress. I think practice is more important than perfection. Just practice. So I do that 5 days a week right here on New Thought Media Network. And it's just, about inspiration. It's about sharing some confessions. I do some confessionals on there. And it's just, connecting people to what I like to say, their yes. Connecting people to their yes. And I love to give some homework.
That yes, right? That inner yes, that if we just stop and allow it,
yes,
like we can hear it very clearly. It is saying yes to us, and we can say yes to it. And I will admit that I don't watch every day, but I would say at least 3 days a week.
Wow, Tracy, I'm honored.
Yeah. And what happens is, one of the great things about New Thought Media Network, right? Because we're live streaming, then the stream is available. So yes. I do watch usually at least 3 times a week, but not always when you are live.
Yes.
Like it might be 3 or 4 hours later. I've been in meetings and I'm taking a break, and then I'll be like, oh, let me see what Rev Melissa's talking about today. Especially when you do series, because you a lot of the times will be like, okay, all week we're going to talk about this theme.
Yes.
or this principle or this practice, or for the next 3 days, we're going to talk about this.
Yes.
And, and then you get me hooked.
Yeah. I am a theme girl. I am a theme girl. And recently, Tracy, I did a theme on pamphlets because I have all these little pamphlets. Wait, do I have any? Yeah. I have all these little pamphlets, like at least 50 of them about different things. And I said, why not do a pamphlet series? And so that's what I did a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And it was great. It was great. So stuff like Johnny Coleman, It Works If You Work It, and some Emmett Fox about tithing, just, whatever is around, we could use everything, right? We could use
Because it's
everything.
all God.
Yes, yes.
It all takes us right back to spirit. It all takes us right back to life. And I love, it's funny that you would hold up pamphlets, because in January, I was thinking, since I want to write a book, but I keep telling myself I don't have time to write the book right now. And so I was thinking, what if you did a pamphlet every month? Because I picked up a pamphlet somebody else had written. And I was like, 16 pages, 32 pages in a really small format. That's not a whole lot. You could do that. But now we're 3 months into the year and it's still just an idea, but it could happen.
Well, let me share this with you, Tracy. So I have a book in me too that's been in me for decades. And similar to you, I said, I'm going to write this book, haven't written it. Recently, I took a class called Write for Life. And it's based on Julia Cameron's latest book. And she wrote The Artist's Way. I think many people are probably more familiar with The Artist's Way. And she, in this book, Write for Your Life, she's sharing like all of her tools to writing. And one of the things that she says that really resonates with me is it is a practice.
Yes.
It is a practice. So, 10 minutes a day, just write. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Just write. Right. And over time, if you do this every day, you will have your pamphlet, you will have your book, whatever it is, you will have it.
You will have your content for your daily show. You will have your
it.
Sunday talks outlined for the next 6 months. Right.
Yes, you will have it. So it's and I'm saying it like I started doing it while I was taking a class. I didn't. I probably wrote once a week because I still had this idea floating around in my mind that I need all of this time. I need like a good 2 hours, and I got to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's when writers write. All these rules about it, all these rules. And the reality is it's just sitting down and letting it flow.
And with the technology we have nowadays, right? It's like I like to write, like physically. I like to write. I like to read a book holding it in my hand. But the reality is, with technology, we could just take notes on our phone, in the note app.
Yep.
Right. We could be doing that and then put it all together. I have several friends who prepare that way, and or on our laptops, right? We don't have to actually carve out time. But yeah, so it's like pamphlets. I am accepting that this organically happened, not as a coincidence, but for you to make the point you made, and for the universe to remind me that I got excited about the idea of creating pamphlets and haven't thought about it since that day.
There you go.
So yeah, I love it. So poetry, prayer, and practices.
Yes.
Tell me about your life. Like, if I say, how would you describe your life in 1 or 2 words? What would you use as the descriptor? But then why is that the descriptor you chose?
Yeah. Well, that's such an easy question for me to answer, Tracy, because it's what I say. It's my mantra. I'm living life in joy and I'm connected to my yes. Joy and yes, those 2 words are my words. And the reason why is because I would say through COVID, I kind of we often say this, right? We say, well, before COVID, dot dot dot, and since COVID, dot dot dot. So I can relate to that because before COVID, I was living a a life that was very compartmentalized. So I had a corporate job, and it was a roller coaster. And after COVID, when I left that corporate job, it became like really living my life in joy. And the thing that did it for me, if I had to add a third component to that, is really trusting that God is my source for everything. So it became easier for me to really stand in that faith that everything really is going to be okay because everything already is okay. And that was a COVID blessing for me. I know that, people had all kinds of experiences during that time, some tragic. But for me and in my household here, it was a solidification that both myself and my husband can live a life doing what we actually love to do and be compensated for it and not be in a struggle about it, you know? And it's not a hustle. I was having a conversation with somebody and they said, "Oh, I see you still out there hustling." I was like, "Well, then you're not seeing because there is no hustle here. I don't subscribe to hustle. This is my work, this is my life, this is who I am. There's no hustle here." So that's my life. That's my life. And I get to experience it in a way where I feel very much more connected now with myself with a capital S than I've ever had in my life before. So, and I'm a mother. And so for my girls, I have twin girls, they just turned 16 a couple of weeks ago. And for them to see me just doing what I love to do, and for them to see me living life in joy, for them to see, I sometimes hear them repeating to their friends some of the things I say on SIP or some of the things I've said to them. And I'm like, go ahead, babies, go ahead.
Well, and one of the things I love about that is that your daughters are old enough to be able to have seen the contrast
Mm-hmm.
and to remember that, oh, well, it wasn't that, it was bad before, but to see the escalation,
Yes.
right? The reduction of stress and the escalation of joy at an age that they're old enough to feel the difference, even if they can't really describe it.
Yes.
It is a great lesson for them. And also, it's a great lesson for them that, okay, in your 20s and in your 30s, you may have to do a lot of things to get to a point
Mm-hmm.
where you can, go in this direction. But this idea of, no, you can live your life in joy. What
Yes.
brings you joy? What interests you? What is your passion? And where is your faith?
Yes, yes. And you're right, Tracy. They have seen the journey. I remember when you said that, it brought back a memory just like that. Zola, when she was probably 10 or 11, somewhere around there. I was fussing at her about something, and she got really upset. And she says to me, I'll never forget, it was in the bathroom. And she says to me, Mommy, I come to you in peace and you come to me in war. I was like, I'll be right back.
Wow.
I was like, what? I come to you in peace and you come to me in war.
Woo.
That I had to sit myself down and take a couple of breaths, because she was right. She was right. And, you know, I got myself together and I went back to her and I apologized, and, you know, and we talked it through. So from that to, you know, now we're in a different, we still have, you know, the stuff, but now we say to each other, let's just take a moment. You know, they could freely say that to me and I could say that to them. Let's just take a moment and then we'll come back, you know? And I got there because I am more clear about me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more clear about me, you know? And
Well,
so it's been wonderful.
that having permission to say, let's just take a moment, becomes a spiritual practice.
Amen to that. Yes.
Right, that you model. And it's funny, one of the things I talk about a lot on this show is how so many things we do, we don't think of as spiritual practice. Right? We think, oh, if I'm going to be in spiritual practice, that means I am supposed to pull out a meditation mat and sit on the meditation cushion and no less than 30 minutes. And maybe I could have some spiritual music playing in the background, but it's got to be like this structure that I've seen somebody else do or I was introduced to. Or we'll say, oh, it's not spiritual practice unless I'm, you know, praying with a minister or a practitioner, or I've got to commit to this 10-week class, and that's my spiritual practice. But the reality is, technically, the reality is anything that we do on a regular basis, and I would maybe add that connects us to the essential true nature of the Creator, because otherwise it would be spiritual practice. You know, if it was just because I do it all the time, I might, you know, cuss somebody out every day.
Right.
That would be a practice, but it wouldn't be a spiritual practice.
Right.
So when you said that, it's like, oh, I do it and my daughters do it. Like, we, as a family, we have a spiritual practice that is, let's just take a moment.
Yes.
Because the unspoken part is, let's take a moment and go to the spiritual truth, not the human emotion of right now.
Right. Exactly.
So that just triggers for me, like, what are some of your favorite spiritual practices?
Yeah. So, and I love that you said that, you know, anything that we do consistently and connects us with the essential nature of who we are. Because I had an aha moment the beginning of the year with my eating, right? What I'm putting into this vessel here. And I shifted. I have been doing intermittent fasting off and on for a couple of years. But I had it in the space of, you know, because I want to lose weight or because of ... whatever, right? And the beginning of this year, I started to really look at it differently. I started to look at it as a spiritual practice. I'm really feeding my body temple, right? This vessel that God is living through and as, right? So intermittent fasting, believe it or not, is now one of my spiritual practices because I'm much more conscious now of what I am putting into my body temple. I'm very conscious about. I'm making a conscious choice. Now, yes, sometimes that conscious choice is I'm going to have, these chocolate chip cookies and I'm going to really enjoy them and it's okay, you know?
Yes.
So intermittent fasting now is one of my spiritual practices. Another one that I just recently started last year, I've been curious about transcendental meditation. So last year was my year of curiosity. And I said, whatever I'm curious about, I'm going to do it. So I've been curious about transcendental meditation for decades. I have lots of friends who do TM. I kept saying, yeah, I'm going to do it. Never did it. Last year, in January 4th to be exact, I took the first class and now I practice TM. And so that is one of my spiritual practices. One that blew my mind because I've always meditated. That's a spiritual practice of mine. And the way that I held meditation, Tracy, was let me try to fit it in. Let me try to, I only got 5 minutes. Let me do this quick 5-minute meditation. Oh, wait, let me find on YouTube. Let me find a 2-minute meditation. Let me find a 2-minute, because that's all I got. That's all I got is 2 minutes, right? Now, transcendental meditation requires that you meditate twice a day, 20 minutes. Now, here I am trying to find 5 minutes. I'm like, how in the world am I going to do 20 minutes twice a day? Let me tell you, it's the easiest thing because the way I hold it is totally different. It's just totally different. The same thing with the eating. Yes. The way that I hold it is totally different. So transcendental meditation is something I'm really committed to. And I do it twice a day, 20 minutes a day. And it's been amazing. It's been a healing experience for me, actually, because I've had some body healings that's happened through TM.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Spiritual practice does work. As you described that, it took me back to this place where we have a shift in how we think about spiritual practice and how it affects what we do. So 2 things came to mind for me. One, I have a workshop that I do, sometimes in person, sometimes online. And it basically is about spiritual practices you can do in 5 minutes or less. Because of what you said, it's so many people think, well, I just don't have time. Or I only have 3 minutes or 2 minutes. And so I got to find something that fits in that. And what always happens when I facilitate this class is that the majority of people recognize all the things that they've been doing that are spiritual practice, but they never considered it spiritual practice. So that, as I was listening to you, came to mind. It's like, yeah, you can allot a specific amount of time, and 20 minutes is not that long when you come through it with the appropriate mindset. When you think about, Buddhist monks who are in a monastery and they sit down and they do 2 hours of meditation 3 times a day. It's like, 20 minutes twice a day. I could do that.
Right.
But the other thing you brought to mind for me, and regular listeners on the show may have heard me talk about this before, but a few years ago, I was having a conversation with Reverend Lee Wolack, and I don't remember how we got into this at all. But he made a comment about tithing your waking hours in spiritual practice.
Mm.
We tithe our money, we tithe, our talent. But what if we tithed our to spiritual practice?
Mm.
And I remember that just captivated me. And my brain said at first, ain't nobody got time for that. Right. The brain of it's like, you don't have time to like eat lunch half the time. How are you going to tie the whole day? But then when I actually, did the math and said, okay, well, the typical, if you sleep 8 hours a night, you're talking about 16 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And what's 10% of that? And I did translate it into minutes, and then 10%. It's like, oh, it's really not that much time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not even talking about 2 hours, really,
Right.
right? And when I then started looking at, oh, well, I'm in my car a lot. And usually if I'm in my car, if I'm not on the phone with someone, I'm doing affirmations or
Mm-hmm.
I'm praying out loud, like doing prayer for myself or others, or, I'm doing spiritual practice a lot.
Yeah.
And, I meditate and I journal and I do this and that. I'm like, oh, so that became my commitment that I
Yeah.
would at least tithe 10% of my waking hours. And yes, are there some days where that doesn't happen?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But my practice is to do that.
Yes.
And I love what Fiona has said here. Fiona said that spiritual practice for her is experiencing herself as consciousness within the encompassing order of the universe. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Amen to that. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it because it's not using words of specific practices as a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe you have seen that or experienced that with people thinking, well, spiritual practice, that means I must meditate, or I must do affirmations, or I must do prayer. And that's it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. When I work with people, I do spiritual life coaching with people, and I ask them, one, do you have a spiritual practice, and what is it? And someone was sharing, she was an artist, and she colors, and coloring for her is a spiritual practice. She was like, does that count? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely, that counts.
It's just a form of meditation.
Yeah,
But people don't think
yes,
of it. Or the
right,
runner, right?
right.
The runner who closes out everything else and they just get grounded. Or someone who's hiking in nature and they are using that as their connection to spirit. Or some people who will go unnamed who actually consider roller skating twice a week a spiritual practice, because much of the time I'm moving, but it's a moving meditation, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to think about, or I'm not thinking about my grocery list or the
Mhm.
deadline that's due tomorrow. I'm not worrying about, where the money is going to come from to take that trip to Egypt I want to take. I'm not, right? I'm just breathing
Yeah.
and being grateful for a body that can move,
Mhm.
and listening to the music and just getting out of myself.
Yes. You're literally in the universal rhythm. Literally.
Oh, I'm using that. And I'm using it.
Go
I'm using that. You're going
ahead,
to
girl.
see me
It's
on some
yours.
platform somewhere, and I'm going to be like, and a very wise person said, yes, Tracy, you should continue to roller skate because you are experiencing the universal rhythm.
Yes. 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 And I'll tell you, Tracy, a practice that recently I started doing is, and I just learned there's a name for this. I had no idea. It's called forest
Bathing.
forest bathing. Yes, yes, yes. So there's some woods in walking distance from my house, and there's this tree there that it just calls out to me, and it's like it's a huge tree, but it's like a single trunk that goes into two trees. Like it's gigantic, and so it's like a twin tree to me. So I have twins. I like this twin. This is my tree. And one day I went over to the tree and I just laid hands on it, and I could actually feel the pulsation of the tree through my hands. It was so powerful. I was like, "Oh my God, tree!" like, like, like you're breathing. You know, like this is your heartbeat. Like what? And so, probably twice a week, I'll go visit my tree. Right before the show today, I was in the woods with my tree, singing a song out loud about how wonderful my life is right now in this moment, just singing my heart out. And so that's a spiritual practice for me, you know, and to
Yeah.
honor nature, to honor, you know, all that's available to us for our very existence. If there were no trees, we would not be here, right? So just honoring nature is an opportunity for me to be in gratitude.
So we're talking about spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm.
And the show, of course, is poetry, prayer, and practice. And so one question I do like to ask people is about the poetry part of spiritual practice. Like, do you write poetry? Do you use poetry to inspire you as spiritual practice? Yeah, is there a
Yeah.
connection? Because some people do, and many people are like, no, poetry's that stuff from, high school, somebody made me read.
Yes, I do. Poetry helped me to really take in spiritual mind treatment. And the way that it did, so I learned spiritual mind treatment when I was attending Sacred Center in New York. And Sacred Center was a independent spiritual center. And it was probably the first spiritual center that I became a member of, because I used to just pop around, you know, and I landed there and it felt like home. And I was there for a number of years. And it was there that I learned about spiritual mind treatment and praying in a particular way. Now, I love prayer. I love prayer. I grew up in a Pentecostal church. We were some praying folk. And I love to pray in my Pentecostal way. And I love to pray in the Signs of Mind way. And sometimes I blend the two of them together. And when I took this prayer class, spiritual mind treatment class, and learned about this formula, it was hard for me to feel it because it felt too distant for me. Yeah, it was all up in my head. And I was like, there needs to be a bridge for me. And one day I was writing in my journal and this prayer poem came out. And I said, oh, well, look at that. There's the 5 steps. There was like some energy, it was like, to it. And from that point on, I started writing poetry, prayer poems, and just loving it. I don't do it as much as I used to, but it was the thing that really transformed my relationship with prayer, specifically spiritual mind treatment. And I remember taking another class at Sacred Center, and there was we had a teacher who was very serious about prayer. Like, it's nothing to joke about. And she was not a fun teacher. And one of our assignments was to create a prayer poem using something popular at the time. I can't remember what it was. And I decided that I was going to do a prayer poem that was sarcastic and I thought humorous as my final project. So Tracy, I stood up at the last day of class. I had on like these like really like gigantic glasses, and I was just like having myself a ball. And I stood up and I'm going to read the prayer poem that that failed me in this class. Because clearly I had missed the whole message about it being serious. And I took that F joyfully. I was like, I don't care.
Right. It works for me.
It works for me.
But now I really do want to hear this poem.
Okay. So this was in 2009. So, okay. And I haven't read this in years. All right. I have a little note on the top. Please read this with lighthearted sarcasm and mischievous humor. So I guess I said that in the class. And she was like this. Yes, yes, yes. I am one with the one true life of light, peace, and harmony. And I say yes to that one life of truth and creativity. Glory to thee that we are one. Big ups to the souls that conspire with my soul to grow me and stretch me beyond my comforts of fashion. Oh, souls, you tricky little boogers with your obsessive compulsion to support my life with all these wonderful teachable moments. Oh, joy, joy, peace, joy, joy, love, light, and more joy. For yet another opportunity to see people, things, and situations differently, possibly from a higher level, maybe from a loving perspective, if I choose. It's my choice after all, isn't it? Here I am now, in the present, being with the present, being present in the nowness of the present, being with the presence in the presence, holding things lightly, staying in the light, being with the light, seeing the light in darkness, calling in the light, being gentle with myself, holding my seat, weeding my garden, going to the top of the mountain, saying yes to life, staying open, staying connected, staying with the truth, staying still, breathing, oming, loving. And with all those tools, I play the game of life. When I win, even when I lose, I think I've won. Or was it a forfeit? I'm not sure. Maybe life goes in overtime. And knowing that the game of life wants me to win and wants you to win, so we win. And it's a win-win. And to honor the triune, it's a win-win-win. With all of this and so much more, I say thank you, God, for everything. Sometimes I do complain, and then I go back and I use my tools and return home to thanking God for everything. I have no complaints whatsoever on a good day.
Ooh, I love that.
Thank you. I got a big old F.
Yeah. Big ups. Tricky little boogers. Win, forfeit, or overtime. Yeah, you got an F.
Yes.
But you would have gotten an A++. plus if I had been your teacher.
Thank
Because
you.
I'm all about making it real, like whether it's in the language or the emotion or in the like, make it real. Use what is the human experience
Yes.
to communicate and to deepen.
Yes.
Otherwise, we get stuck in our heads and we put ourselves, even in that sense, in a little box.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I
It
love
draws you closer. You know, I mentioned growing up in a Pentecostal church, and one of the things that was often said was to draw me closer to thee,
Yes.
right? What
Yeah.
draws us closer to God, right? I think humor does. I really do. I think fun. I don't think it has to be so serious, you know?
Not all the time.
Not all the time. Not all the time.
Ooh, I knew this was going to happen. Our time just starts going so fast, and we could
Yes.
talk for like 3 hours. But you just said something I do want you to spend 3 or 4 minutes on. You again said, "Well, I grew up Pentecostal, all right, and now you're this amazing light in the New Thought movement." Centers for Spiritual Living and Science of Mind, yes, but the New Thought movement overall. So, like, give us I know we could do a whole 45 minutes on the whole journey, but what is it that brought you to this place that we all want to be in, living life in joy from a faith and spiritual system pathway?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do my best to say this in 2 to 3 minutes. I really just started to love who I am.
Mm.
To be like that's as succinct as I can be. I really started loving myself. I really did. And the tools that I learned through this journey of Science of Mind, New Thought helped me, to find myself again. When I was a little girl, I was this, my mother would say stubborn, but I wasn't stubborn. I was clear about who I am. And it was more so like, why can't y'all see who I am? And so over time, I started not seeing myself. Like I started seeing myself through this veil. And this journey through New Thought helped me to recognize myself again and to really love and honor who I am, right? As this unique expression of God that we so love to say that we're individualized expressions of God. Well, I truly believe that, and that's where I live from now. And it's been a journey to get there. It's been a journey to get there. And then I would say number 2 for me is the fact that God chose me to have the experience of being a mother to Aria and Zola, that I get to have this experience, right? Has been life altering for me because they just remind me again of love, of unconditional love, because they love me unconditionally. I love them unconditionally. And there's nothing better. There's just nothing better than that, as part of my journey. And they remind me when I when I when I take a left turn, they remind me, okay, mommy, where we going with this?
Yeah, I love that song. When I forget, will you remember for me? And sometimes the person or the people who are remembering for me let me know in ways that are not so sweet or gentle, but they are reminding me, no, this is not who you want to be. This is not who you really are.
That's right.
Like,
That's
turn
right.
it around.
That's right.
Step
Like,
back.
I'm coming to you in peace and you coming to me in war.
Right there.
right there.
No, that would be a great book title, by the way. Or a book subtitle, like, one word title, and that's the subtitle.
I see you, Tracy Brown. I see you.
Well, our time is just about up. I really want to thank you. I appreciate who you are and how you show up in the world day after day, week after week. And it's been a blessing to visit with you.
Oh, same here, Tracy. It's been a joy. Thank you so much. Let's do it again.
Yes, in a few months, let's do it again. So,
Wonderful.
hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rev Melissa. And I'll be back with you next week. And I hope that you are marking your calendar for every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time for poetry, prayer, and practice.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week, or watch on demand at www.ntmedia.org or youtube.com/New Thought Media Network. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.